What is up, guys? Taiki here, and welcome to the market update for May 2nd. So we have a lot to cover, so let's get right into it. So I tweeted this Saturday night, and I was like, wow, like what a brutal start to the weekend, because I felt like there was a lot of capitulation that happened on Saturday, depending on like whatever market you were in, right? Like we had bad news after bad news after bad news, right? We had bad news in the morning, in the afternoon, at night, and we saw some altcoins go down 10%, some go down 20%, and some go down like 40, 50%, like DeFi Kingdoms and Jewel. So let's first cover Jewel first, right? Because this is like a darling for me and for some members of the community, because I feel like it was one of the projects that a lot of people just like believed in the team, right? Like when you're putting money into like a GameFi project, it's so speculative that you kind of have to bet on the team to execute, because in the short term there really isn't a game, but you're hoping that like you're farming, you're earning whatever yield, and maybe like 4 months from now, there's going to be a game, right, where there's actually an influx of users, and that's what we were kind of betting on. But the problem that DeFi Kingdoms had, and what created a lot of outrage, was that there was this problem with the mining quests, right? So obviously, when you have lock jewel, it's going to start unlocking later this year. But if you want to start unlocking your lock jewel, then you can buy a set of miners and then like let them go on a mining quest. And Shishir kind of goes over like what actually happened, right? There was this. It wasn't really an exploit. I mean, it doesn't really matter what you call it. But there was like this bug, a glitch, where let's say I have a bunch of lock jewel. I have like 20 different MetaMask wallets, each with like a set of miners. I can start a quest on my first MetaMask wallet, and once it starts, I can transfer the lock jewel to a second wallet, start the quest, and then kind of do that. Just keep doing that, and like maximize my locked jewel rewards. And if you have like a bot like code this, then there was like one individual or an entity just locking or unlocking a bunch of jewel, just like dumping it in the open market, right? And this caused, I'm sure this was part of the reason like price didn't do so well. And this is a bug, right? It happens. Obviously not great, right? Obviously not great, but it happens. But the problem, and I think the main reason people were so angered was because the DeFi Kingdoms team apparently knew this back in January 31st. And I did confirm this, I think. So, I'm just presenting the information, but essentially, the team knew about this back then. Not like there was like no one like taking advantage of this back then, and maybe they were too busy like shipping Crystal Veil or something, but they didn't really address it. And once the community found out that there was like this entity just like dumping a bunch of jewel that they unlocked through the mining problem, people were like, oh my god, like what's happening? Like, is this like an inside job? Like, why didn't the team address this immediately? And it was a lot of like anger, a lot of panic, and the Discord was a mess. There's also, Frisky, right, the founder of DeFi Kingdoms, also wrote this article. I'll link this in the description, but clarifying Lootswap. So Lootswap was like some janky project on Harmony like way back when, and apparently this was like one of the few like first projects that Frisky's ever worked on. He left the project once like the token like pumped and dumped, and that's why he like left the project to join DeFi Kingdoms. You can read this too, right? But essentially, like, I don't think this is that big of a deal, right? He worked on a project, like the team that he worked with like wasn't that great, and he started DeFi Kingdoms. But I guess the problem was that because he essentially came out and said that Lootswap was like basically his first ever DeFi project. It's like, okay, like, are you really an expert when it comes to designing a DeFi project? To be honest, like, to me, like, I don't like to judge people based off of like their resume. I just like to judge people based off of like their work. That's kind of like the crypto ethos, right? The part of the beauty in crypto is that you can have anonymous developers, anonymous founders create quality projects, and you don't care if they went to like a good school. You don't care if they worked at like Goldman or whatever, Google or something. Like, if the dev is good, right, and he's a good actor, then we're gonna rally behind that founder. So that's kind of how I think about it. But essentially, but I guess the TLDR is like people were so upset with this mining thing that they didn't address that when this loot swap thing came out. It's like, oh my god, like who the hell are you? Like, are you rugging us? And to be honest, at this point, the way I'm viewing DeFi Kingdoms is that like it's I guess the problem is that with DeFi Kingdoms, I feel like their biggest asset was their brand. the integrity of the team and the community's trust on that team. And once that trust and integrity is breached even a little bit, it kind of destroys the fundamentals of DeFi kingdoms. And the team is trying to, they had like this AMA. It was like an hour and a half long. They kind of addressed everything. The Frisky was like, I'm sorry, like, I didn't mean for this to happen, and we're gonna work our asses off to get your trust back. And one of the things that got announced today was that apparently like the entire team is gonna fully dox themselves. They're gonna get on a Zoom call. They're gonna be like, okay, my name is yada yada yada. I am like, I don't know, like 30 years old, and I worked at this company, right? They're gonna fully dox themselves in order to try to get the community's trust back. I'm not here to say like whether or not like, oh, like I'm buying the dip, because I'm not buying the dip. The way I perceive the project right now is that, right now, I mean, even if DeFi Kingdoms were to come back, which is a big if, it's going to take them months for it to come back. So at this, with that in mind, like I think we all have, if you're in the project, we all have some amount of locked jewel, right? That's going to start unlocking later this year. I know the documentation says July, but it's most likely going to start unlocking August, September, or even October, because the documentation assumed that Harmony block times would be 2 seconds, and they kind of designed it for, assuming 2 second block times, it's going to start unlocking 12 months from July. But because Harmony blockchain is like sometimes down, it doesn't really work. It's sometimes like 3 seconds, 4 seconds for a period of a few months. So likely it's going to start unlocking, maybe best case August, September, right? I hold some stuff on Crystalville, but I essentially got rid of most of my bags, and I'm looking at my locked jewel to capture any upside that I could potentially get, right? Because let's say this does come back, right? I mean, maybe it takes 6 months, but at that point, like my jewel is starting to unlock. And yes, if the game comes back, I wish I would have bought at like $1 or like $2 or whatever. But it's not really worth the risk for me, at least. So that's kind of how I'm viewing it. And yeah, I know a lot of people were hurt by this. It's like, oh my God, like Frisky, like I thought we loved you. But at this point, the team just has to deliver, right? I mean, there's nothing we can do, there's nothing the team can do other than deliver, right? Either they dox themselves and deliver, and they get our trust back, the community's trust back, or they dox themselves and the project never comes back, right? It's like there's no way to know, right? But for me, I just wanted to take risk off, and I'm viewing my locked jewel as like my vested jewel, I guess. That everyone's gonna start to unlock. The next bad news that we had, right? I felt like the mining thing was like a Friday/Thursday, and then it like really got big on Saturday, and then the next big thing that happened on Saturday, right, was that this Phantom Whale got like liquidated for a bunch of FTM, and essentially this person had like I don't know like $40 million worth of FTM on Scream, and its health factor was like essentially a 1.01. This was a screenshot from that day. Right, I mean, health rate is under 1, so like this person was on the verge of getting liquidated, and currently this wallet has $13 million in FTM, and I think at the beginning of the day this like used to be like $50 million, right? So this guy got wrecked. There's some screenshots, right? There's a lot of anger within the community. It's like, oh my God, like this person like Phantom King, like he was like pumping and dumping. There's just like so much anger, and just no one was like feeling it, right? Like no one was feeling it. And even prominent members of the Phantom community was like, yeah, like the chain is kind of messed up, right? It's really rough out there, right? And the thing with all these blockchains, like the thing with every EVM chain, right? Like we talk about Avalanche, Phantom, whatever, right? Like Ethereum, like they're all gonna have issues, right? It's EVM doesn't really scale that well, right? Even like Rust, like Solana, is trying to fix the scalability problem, but even that doesn't even Solana doesn't scale that well. So whenever the crypto markets, the DeFi markets get really stressed, these changes go down. And I mean, Phantom didn't go down, but the gas was like 50,000, right? It was basically unusable. And this happened with Solidly. This happens when there's like a lot of activity on the platform. And I don't think Phantom is cooked. I mean, it's definitely cooked in the short term for sure. The sentiment there is like in the gutters. But I still think in the grand scheme of things, if the Phantom Foundation keeps shipping, right, Michael Kong and co, I think the project is fine, right? But yeah, it's so many headwinds, right? Like Solidly, I mean, that was bad. Andre leaving, that was bad. I mean, like liquidation, like the Phantom Whale being liquidated, that's not bad. The chain being incredibly congested when the whale was being liquidated, not bad. People are leaving the ecosystem, and you can see this in like the uni whales, right? I mean, Phantom, like there hasn't been a day. I mean, I guess there's like one day on April 14th, but in the last 30 days, there's only been outflows, right? There's only been outflows. So, it's definitely rough out there. And, but there is a flashing buy signal that is showing up for Phantom, right? And that is the Tezos indicator, right? Like I've often mentioned that, hey, like whenever Phantom gets below the market cap of Tezos, you just buy, right? Like don't get me wrong, I am not buying, right? Not financial advice, I am not buying. But if you do like Phantom, right, and you like don't have exposure and you always wanted exposure, Tezos 2.2 billion market cap, Phantom 1.9 billion market cap, I'm not saying it's a bottom, but historically, this has been a really good buy signal. Yeah, so like I said, Phantom has significant headwinds. It's not going to be fixed overnight. It's probably going to take weeks, months. But yeah, the Tezos indicator is flashing a buy signal. Okay, next, let's talk about Solana, right? It also went down. To be honest, I'm highlighting like DeFi Kingdoms, Phantom, and Solana, but like every chain is like is having issues, right? I mean, not all chains. Like Avalanche is like doing fine and whatnot, but like these chains are just like not doing that well. And Solana went down again. I think it went down for 7 hours, just because there was a bunch of people trying to mint NFTs. And there's this screenshot from Nicholas, and he mentioned that like they're probably gonna shut down NFT minting because the bots that are trying to mint NFTs on Solana, it's causing congestion. And I don't think Solana has like a gas bidding system. So, even when the blockchain gets congested, it doesn't really raise the cost of doing a transaction. And, I don't know like what they're trying to go for. But yeah, it's just going down. And there's this troll account called Solana Inc. Saying that, hey, like, please don't contact us outside of business hours from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern time. Kind of saying that, hey, like, the network does not run 24/7. So yeah, it's kind of funny, right? It's kind of funny, right? Not funny if you're holding crypto assets, right? Because like if Solana goes down, then like a bunch of other L1s is like dump because everything in crypto is correlated, right? And people hold a bunch of these L1s, so if they're losing a bunch of money on one L1, then they're gonna sell some other L1 to rebalance their portfolio, raise cash and whatnot. So Saturday was a really brutal day actually. Like I felt like on last May 2021. Oh, that was like, wow, like the May liquidations was like almost a year ago. Like quick, like it's crazy how in crypto, like it feels like we've been here for like 5 years, but the May liquidations was like less than a year ago, right? It's kind of crazy. But anyways, what was I going for? But anyways, yeah, like May 2021, like I woke up and like the number in my portfolio was like down a lot, right? It's like, oh, but at least it felt like the band-aid was being ripped off, right? It's like, okay, it already happened, maybe we can bottom and like go high from there. But I feel like in the last couple of months or last 6 months, it's just been a continuous downtrend. And sentiment wise, it's just really bad out there, right? Really bad out there. And people tell us like, hey, like sell on the way up, buy on the way down. But it's not that easy, right? Like we don't want to sell on the way up, we don't want to buy on the way down. So I think it's important to like have some rules, right? But sentiment is really bad down there, right? Especially like for Phantom, right? I feel like FTM is really in the capitulation / anger phase, right? And this psychology of a market cycle thing, this is kind of a meme, right? I mean, not everything takes on this route, right? Because this assumes that we enter a bubble, we dump, and then there's some disbelief and like it recovers, but not all markets function like this. But anyways, it's the sentiment's really bad down there, or bad down here. Let's keep moving. And also, like Saddle Finance got exploited on Ethereum on April 30th. On April 30th, and this isn't that big of news, right? I'm just sharing this because literally, like I think on April 28th, I put some stables on Saddle on Arbitrum, right? I was like, okay, like Optimism airdrop, right? They're rewarding users. I'm just gonna spam a few transactions on Arbitrum and hopefully like be eligible for an airdrop. Probably not, but might as well try, right? Might as well like burn like $50 in Arbitrum fees across like the next couple of weeks. And literally 2 days later, like this thing comes out. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like did I just like lose like 2% of my portfolio, right? Because I put like 2% of my stables, or 2% of my portfolio, which was denominated in stables, into Saddle Finance. Luckily, this only affected Ethereum, right? Ethereum mainnet. So my Arbitrum funds were totally fine. But I was like, oh my God, like, this sucks, right? I mean, this is like part of the reason why Anchor is so strong, right? Because yes, you can earn like 40% on stables on like random applications on Phantom or like whatever, right? But it's not like you're being paid like, let's say 40% in like the native farm token, and if the token dumps, then like you're essentially earning like 5% APY. Like it's junk. But at least with Anchor, we're being paid right in USD, the principal, and that kind of safety, that kind of reassurance is really valuable in this type of market. So like I mentioned, right, May 1st, the APY dropped from 19.5% to 18% on Anchor, and I kind of consider this to be a headwind because if this went down in May, then it's going to go down in June. It's probably going to go down in July back to 15%, and maybe the narrative around UST is going to weaken a little bit. But if you look at the statistics, it really hasn't slowed down like the pace of the Luna burn, right? I mean, like Luna circulating supply is at like at all-time lows, and there's still a lot of inflows into Anchor. And I think it's because in this type of market, we want to be able to earn yield on stablecoins paid out in the principal, right? Not just like in some random farm token, but actually in the principal. And yes, we know that this can go down to 16.5% next month, and most likely 15% in July. But still, right, 15%, even if it is 15%, I think the community, right, the wider community, right, feels relatively safe holding funds on Anchor. And there's been a lot of FUD around like this creating a downward spiral. The Ponzi is going to go to zero. I don't really think so, right? I do think this does hurt the narrative, right? I mean, Anchor at 18% is a lot weaker than Anchor at 19.5%, but I don't really think that money is going to leave Anchor, right? Because there are switching costs. Because if I leave Anchor and enter like whatever farm, I have to swap UST to another stable coin. I have to pay bridging fees. I have to pay gas. I mean, yeah, there are switching costs for leaving Anchor. So what I expect is that in the Terra ecosystem, right? If people take profits on like Luna, Astro, like whatever, UST is going to still go to Anchor, right? Whether it's 18 or 15%. I feel like a lot of money will be retained in the ecosystem. What might have what issue that the issue that might arise is that if like USDD launches with 30%, if USN launches, like whenever those things launch with like 20-30% yields, there could be less incremental dollars that enter the Terra ecosystem, but I still expect UST to and like the Luna burn to be relatively strong. But it's impossible to forecast the sentiment of the entire market. Like would people like feel safe with the lendiness of Anchor 18%? Or would people be open to exploring USN 20%, roughly 20% whenever it does launch, USDD 30% launch whenever that does launch? But in this type of market, I do think that yield in stablecoins is highly sought for. Like lots of demand for it, and I do think that these algo stable coins will do well, right? As long as they're like backed by billionaires. And I guess like the bull case for Luna and like UST is that prior to the Anchor rates dropping, all of the other like Terra ecosystem applications had to compete with 19.5% on Anchor, right? Because if you're like Aperture Finance or something and you offer like 25% on stablecoins, well, like do people want to take on the smart contract risk for an incremental 5%? Maybe not, right? But because Anchor rates are going down, maybe that could drive more TVL to other ecosystem applications on Terra. I'm just highlighting Aperture Finance. I'm not endorsing this. I don't have money in this. But what they're trying to do is create these delta neutral strategies on Mirror. And you can earn like roughly 30%. I think these rates are not up to date, but they're backed by investors. But the thing is, like Mirror, these look at these premiums on Mirror, right on the right side. I don't think Mirror is functioning the way it's supposed to. So I don't think I'm not sure how Aperture is gonna pivot their strategy, but yeah, definitely Mirror is I don't think that there's that many people like trying to like build on Mirror at this point after Astroport launched. So yeah, not so great there. And then the next thing I want to go over, right? 19 minutes. Okay, we still have some of these topics to cover. Is USDD Tron, right? I mean, Justin Sun said he's going to launch this on May 5th. I'm like, okay, like where the hell is the yield going to come from? Risk free 30%. All right, bro. And I read through this and like there's like barely any like I don't really know what the hell's going on here, right? It just feels like they're just copying UST. and just making it 30%, to do like a dick measuring contest with Do Kwon, right? It's like I'm the better billionaire or whatever. But Tron DAO are gonna raise $10 billion 6 to 12 months from now. Okay, Tron DAO basic risk-free interest rate to 30%. Like, where's that coming from? There's like no information. So I don't want to bet against billionaires, but what the hell, man? Where's the yield coming from? Like, my guess is that literally like they're just gonna mint USDD and like give it out to people that stake USDD, similar to Anchor. I feel like they're just gonna do the same thing that Anchor is gonna do, or that Anchor did. And hopefully Justin Sun's wallet is a backstop to like whatever bad things that might happen here, right? So that being said, I kind of want to end the video with just a farewell message, saying, okay, like, yes, like technically we should be wanting to buy here, right? Because prices are lower, right? Like, if you liked X token at $50 and now it's at $30, like, you'll really like it, right? But obviously as humans, we can't think like that, or I guess we should think like that, but we don't think like that because we are risk averse by nature, and we get scared, right? I mean, it happens, right? Fear and greed, it's a thing. So if you do want to gain additional exposure, right, in the markets, I think the traditional method is like, hey, like, I have some stable coins, I'm going to buy the dip. But I do want to highlight some other strategies that you could do that could mute some volatility, and it might help you express your views on the market. So obviously tough week. And the first question that you should ask yourself is, if I liquidated my entire position, right, my entire portfolio, assuming that there aren't really like tax implications, right, would I buy back the same percentage of my bags that I hold right now? I think I've brought this question up before, but especially in these type market conditions, it really helps to rebalance, selling your less convicted bags and like adding more to your higher conviction bags, or if not higher conviction, then maybe like, safer assets like Bitcoin, Ether, stable coins. Because, for example, Drool, right? I'm sure we all feel a certain way about DeFi Kingdoms, Drool, but if you sold, like, let's say you have like 3% in Drool, if you sold everything, right? If you sold all your Drool into stable coins, would you buy back, right, 3% in Drool? And chances are, like, you probably won't, because there's a lot of FUD around it, and maybe you're fine like dealing with the FUD, right? Maybe you think the FUD is overblown, so you're fine, right? But me personally, right, I just like felt like, if I sold my Drool, I would not buy back. So like, why am I holding Drool, right? So I sold some Drool, and I'm sure this can apply to a lot of other portfolios. And the biggest example that I show is Klima. This thing is insane. But anyways, I've had a lot of people saying like, hey, like, like, can you check out my portfolio? Like, what would you do? And like, Klima was like $500, and they're like, I'm down so much already. Like, I don't care. I'm just gonna hold it in case it does something. But you can't really think that way, right? Because if you sold your Klima back then, like, would you buy back? Probably not. Then like, why are you holding your bags in the first place? I think this question is a good way to get rid of some bias, right? Of like wanting to see red number turn into a green number. But if you view every day as a new day, if you view your positions every day as a new position, it might help you rebalance, it might help you rebalance your portfolio. So that's one. And also, if you do want to buy the dip, right? I'm not saying it's a good idea to buy the dip, right? I have no idea. But if you do want to long, there is a way that you could, there's a way that you can, express certain views. So what you can do is, like, you can short one coin to buy another coin. So obviously Phantom, like, maybe, I'm not suggesting like, Phantom particular, right, to short, but I'm just expressing this concept, right? Like, you can replace FTM with one, you can replace FTM with Avalanche, that doesn't really matter, or even ETH. You can borrow FTM, right, on Geist, and to buy Luna with, right? So if the market dumps, maybe we assume that Phantom will dump harder than Luna. In that case, you're actually like making money, right, kind of. But if the market pumps, then you might expect Luna to pump harder than FTM, and you're also making money. This is a way that you can like mute volatility to the upside and downside, right? Because of course, if Luna pumps, then of course I would much rather have bought Luna with stablecoins instead of like borrowing FTM. But this is like one way that you can kind of express your views on the market. Right, and what I did last week, right, right before the markets nuked a lot harder, was, hey, like, I was like, okay, I kind of want to buy some near, but I don't want to buy it with like my stable coins, right? So I bought some near, and to protect, or to kind of hedge that. So let's say I bought like $1,000 worth of near. you can do the strategy where you can borrow $2,000 worth of Bitcoin, either AVAX, and buy GLP, right, on GMX, and that way you're effectively, you're kind of delta neutral. You're not really delta neutral, but you're effectively delta neutral, right? It's as close as you can get. I'm not going to go over GLP, GMX mechanics, right? Just go to my previous videos if you want. But this is this type of stuff that you can do, right? In case you want to buy the dip and you're like less bullish, like one particular asset than the other, right? Maybe this helps. And because at the end of the day, right, we should be wanting to buy the dip, whatever, right? Like, oh, like, like you sold the bottom, like, but like it doesn't really matter, right? At the end of the day, we're just trying to maximize our sleep adjusted returns. Like, we want to be able to sleep at night. We don't want to wake up in the middle of the night, 4 a.m., open CoinGecko and be like, wow, like I'm down bad, right? I'm down bad. So yeah, there's that. Yeah, there's not that much else I want to cover. In terms of like the headwinds and like tailwinds, like obviously the DeFi kingdom is like, this is bad, right? It's gonna take time to repair. Like I don't even know like USDD 30, like where's that coming from? USN, like when is that gonna come? As anchor rates go down, maybe that's a tailwind. But maybe I'm underestimating the true demand demand factors for anchor, because I still expect like a bunch of money to flow into Anchor, just because it's been around. There's like less smart contract risk, and 80% is still good. 16.5% is still good. 15% is still really, really good. Yeah, so I still love algo stablecoins. I guess to touch on like my near position, right? I mean, I feel like I'm always in this like tug and pull scenario of like when do I say I'm wrong? Like when do I say I'm wrong, right? Because I've had this position off like let's say like 5 months, and it's not doing so well, right? I kind of ask myself like every single day, right? And like I mentioned, right, with the question of like rebalancing your portfolio, like it doesn't really matter how much money you're down or up. If you view your position every single day as a new position, like would I still have the same amount of coins, like X% in that coin, X% in that coin, right? I still feel like good about near, and I understand that it could be wrong, and I've been wrong, right, in the past 5 months, and I paid the price, but the metrics, I still like the numbers. I still like the TVL factor, right? So let's go back to here. I mean, the TVL inflows have been pretty strong for near, and TVL is just like one equation, right? Like let's just go to what is it, DeFi Llama. Right? Because at the end of the day, TVL doesn't really matter, right? I mean, it's all about value capture. I feel like there's like so many people that like look at FTM market cap to TVL and like they're using this to like buy the dip and whatnot. But if it hasn't worked in the past like 6 months, like is this even the right metric to look at, right? So TVL doesn't really matter. It's more about like what's the value capture of the token. Like for me, I feel like with USN, like whenever that actually launches with yield, the mechanics of USN essentially make it so that you kind of have to buy back near in the open market to arbitrage the difference, right? When there's high demand for USN. So I'm kind of betting on that. But as every week passes, right? I mean, like as sentiment gets worse and worse, there's less risk appetite in the market, and it's more and more, it becomes more and more likely that this position just like could get me wrecked. I'm fully aware of that, right? I'm fully aware of that. Like I'm not like just like oblivious to like what's happening in the markets. But I still like algo stablecoins in this environment. I mean, I think Anchor, UST, their success is pretty good signal, right? For example, like I can't look this up right now, but Terra DeFi experienced $500 million in inflows on Fireblocks, which is like institutional DeFi. And if $500 million is flowing into Anchor, then I would expect some more like stables to flow into Near, and even Tron too. Like I'm not touching Tron, right? Maybe when they're more transparent, I'll touch Tron, but that's kind of how I view things. I'm just trying to be honest, right? I'm just like I'm just doing the best out here, right? I'm just doing the best out here. Taking some risks, right? Because the crypto game, it's all about like risk return, right? Like what's the risk? Like how much risk am I taking? Like what's the potential return? And given those variables, like okay, like let's position ourselves. But this year has been pretty tough, right? I mean, I'm doing okay. I mean, it's like but I'm not doing good either. It's like as I did this full time, it's like I expect myself to, you know, significantly outperform Bitcoin and ETH, because I feel like that's like the basket that you know, we should be striving to beat, right? And you know, I am outperforming Bitcoin and ETH, but like, you know, it's not like I'm outperforming it by a significant amount. So you know, there's that. There's a market update. I don't know how long this video has been. It's half an hour. God. Okay. I think I covered everything. Let me check actually. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's everything, right? Yeah, I think that's everything. Like what? Okay, Justin Sun, like what are you planning here, buddy? Like, well, come on, His Excellency Justin Sun. All right, like, you know, we'll see how it goes. Thank you guys for watching. Have fun out there, and let me know what your thoughts are on, you know, just anything I covered. And I'll see you next week, probably on Monday, for the next market update. Bye bye.